Greetings everybody. We are back again with our next panel discussion about how to improve the efficiency of due diligence in real estate investments. Thank you for staying with us. We really appreciate that you took the time to be here and listen to our panel discussion. Let me now briefly introduce our distinguished panelists. Mark Miller, Chief Product Officer, RECOGNYTE, the UK, and Adam Corbuy, Chief Technical Officer, Orthograph, Hungary. Mark Miller is the Chief Product Officer at RECOGNYTE. Mark is passionate about using advancements in technology to enable ambitious companies to research their full potential. Mark has held leadership positions in several industry sectors and spent a decade on Wall Street delivering transformative, successful new products to market. Mark started out as a software developer and moved into product management, where he has helped numerous companies transform in several fields ranging from enterprise communications to energy to big data. His work has spanned small startups, scale-ups, corporate incubators, as well as large companies in the UK and USA. Mark holds a degree in electronic engineering from Northumbria University and an MBA from the Open University Business School. Adam Corbuy is the key founder of Orthograph. Adam is an electrical engineer by profession, but worked always as a software developer from the age of 12. As an employee of Graphisoft, in 1998 invented RECOGNYTE, the first BIM, CAFM, and CMMS software system. At that time, BIM was called Virtual Building. This system became the market leader in Hungary and is used all around the world with success. In 2005, Adam made a spin-off of the RECOGNYTE department and established an own company that has grown continuously since then. Adam still participates in sales, project services, technology developments related to the project implementation to be able to effectively fulfill the growing demand of Orthograph's services by involving a continuously growing service and strategic development partner network. Hello.
Thank you for the introduction. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So Mark will now begin the presentation, followed by Adam, and after their brief initial remarks, we will begin with the Q&A session. We don't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Nice to meet you all. Thank you for that introduction. Well, the purpose of the quick speech I'm going to give right now is to answer a basic question of how to improve the efficiency of due diligence in real estate investment. What that really means is how do we find out about all the risks that exist and how to reduce them, or at least understand them, so that we understand what money losses or gains that we could potentially make when we make the investment. I'm going to take you through a few slides just to set the scene in terms of what due diligence is about and how it's evolved over time and how technology can potentially achieve some efficiencies in there. So let me quickly share my slides. There you go. So that's the question we're going to answer. So what is due diligence? It basically is the process of evaluating multi-tenanted large commercial or industrial buildings. So it could be single buildings or a portfolio of tens of thousands of properties that are being held in either the loan collateral format or as actual owned property, which is actually what RECOGNYTE deals with, both of them. But we also have to have technology in place, because when you're dealing with tens of thousands of properties, understanding the risk factors in that becomes very important. And you need to evaluate and identify all the factors that contribute to the risk of your decision, which effectively is what due diligence is. So what does it actually consist of? What things do we need to take account of? So obviously there's the financials, what cash flow there is, what if there is multi-tenancy, the tenancy, the income, the current rent levels, the occupancy, the market values of what it is, the liquidity of what it could be in terms of selling it, and how the value would look like at the end of that liquidity. So if it's very illiquid and it takes 2 years to sell, what do you do with that property? What are your expenses? What is your income during that period of time if you're trying to sell it? And if you're looking to have a long-term investment, you need to understand what the market value is on a regular basis. Then, of course, there's the legal aspect, which is, typically, is it actually fully owned? How many owners are there? What restrictions of use of the property are there? Is it fully constructed? Is the title deed actually held? All those various different legal questions. And then there's probably more importantly some of the physical condition, which is, what is the quality of the property, and what is the efficiency, the maintenance of it. And I'll talk about some technologies that we've actually been developing to help us understand that, both for single prop buildings, commercial real estate buildings, as well as for thousands of properties in a portfolio. And then lastly, and of course we can't escape from this, is the ESG part, the environment, social and governance part, which I think, I'm not going to belabor this point. You all know what it is by now, I should imagine. Probably tired of hearing it. But we do need to figure out the actual realities and the practicalities of how we understand what the environmental impact is of that property. If it's a shopping mall, what is the environmental goals or investment that you need to make? If you have a housing stock of mostly residential, what is it that you have to invest? Which ones do you want to divest because they are too costly to be able to make energy efficient and meet some of the 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever the target may be in various different jurisdictions. Ultimately, this can be very time consuming, and obviously the social aspect of this is also, I'll go into more detail in a second, is also quite important, as well as the governance. So those are the kind of four main areas that you want to consider. If you go into each one, so the environment as an example, it's a big topic right now, obviously with the conferences and so on, and the world leaders getting together. You've heard a session this morning on how to calculate carbon footprint. We actually, as part of our software, calculate carbon footprint for essentially thousands of properties. So you feed the portfolio of your properties in, or your single building in, and we will actually have a rough calculation of carbon footprint to look at what the potential energy efficiency of that building is. And we'll talk in a minute a little bit about some of the technology that we potentially can use to use computer vision, for example, to look at the energy efficiency of that property, both looking at internal images as well as external images, to actually calculate the cost that you would need to make, or the investment you need to make to actually make that building or that number of portfolio properties efficient. One of the other aspects is the social aspect. Now, the social aspect obviously is a lot around the desirability of the local area, the affordability, the management and maintenance, the safety of that area. And it all boils down quite a lot to the livability of that property, where it's placed and where it is. And the livability of that neighborhood. So it's not just around what the property actually represents in terms of social value, but also what the neighborhood or the surrounding area impacts in terms of the social factors that is for the tenant or the owner of that property. And when you're dealing with tens of thousands of properties potentially, this can become quite challenging. As at RECOGNYTE, we actually have luckily access to cumulatively about 100 years of real estate experience in social housing in the UK in particular, and their view of social value, which is more important to them than the fiscal value, is actually very unique in terms of looking at social value as well as fiscal value when you're looking at properties, and that ultimately helps meet the shareholder targets that people are expecting with the kind of ethical investment that people are looking to make. So whether you're a fund manager and 20% of your real estate is part of 20% of your fund is real estate, and you need to understand what the social impact of that real estate is. That is a key factor. Very quickly, I will just go over governance. So the more intensive asset management will be required to meet the changing needs of residential and commercial sectors. They need to be more adaptable and more responsive to crisis and changing needs of clients. A good governance policy for data fed into the system ensures better quality data and thus better quality outcome. There are many issues when looking at properties, whether it's a commercial single large building or it's thousands of properties in a portfolio, is anti-bribery, money laundering, data protection, and regulations that obviously we all have to adhere to and meet. So the last thing I want to leave you with before I finish up and hand back is, what do we need to bring together to enable technology to help you with a number of these decisions and risk factors that you want to understand. And it all boils down to actually collecting as much information about the property as possible. And obviously at RECOGNYTE, we've built Data Scout to enable you to remediate that initial data that you have, and then enrich it, analyze it, and even predict, some outcomes that you have, both in terms of the property, the things around the property, the points of interest, the comparables, the valuation, the socioeconomic factors around the building. But it's ultimately all boiling down to data. So when you are able to gather internal and external images, and you're able to analyze them to derive a quality score of a property, which we talked about earlier is a key factor of what you're looking at in terms of due diligence, and even looking at those images to understand the energy efficiency of that property and meet some of the elements that ESG issues are raising, then that data and that cleanliness of that data and the remediation and the enrichment of that data ultimately becomes your biggest weapon in terms of meeting the due diligence that you're looking for. And with that, I finish and hand back to you.
Thank you so much for this presentation, Mark. We now move on to the first question, which is, what are the main bottlenecks in your business in doing due diligence of real estate portfolios?
Are you asking that question to me?
What are the main bottlenecks in your business in doing due diligence of real estate portfolios?
Yeah, as not being a real estate investor, I can only answer that in terms of my experience with clients that are real estate investors, both banks and service providers and others. Ultimately, the main difficulty that they have is that they have a poor data. They have data in different parts of their organization. When they bring it together, it's incomplete, it's inaccurate, it's not clean. When you're talking about single buildings, they quite often have a portfolio of a number of 10, 20, 30 commercial real estate, and they don't fully understand all of the things that are around that building in terms of the impact of the value and the liquidity and the social and the environmental aspects of that building. So actually the main bottleneck actually seems to be A, bringing that data together, B, making sure that that information is something that is actually accurate and makes sense, and then you can use those building foundations to understand your financial impact, your physical condition of that building, and potentially predict using artificial intelligence and machine learning what the future value of it may be if your liquidity of that building is quite long. So that would be my initial answer.
Thank you. And what role does technology currently play, and how do you think that will evolve in the next 5 years?
I think we will get better and better. I mean, the reality is in a number of the countries that we're talking to today, although it's obviously across many countries, but in Southeastern Europe in particular, the data availability, the data accuracy is still relatively immature, and I think that will get better over time because people are going to demand this. There's climate stress tests being done, which is being forced upon, or not forced upon, but expected from financial services organizations. So I think that is something that they will need to be able to answer with technology.
The next one is, would ever trust an algorithm to purchase your next home without any input, just a budget and a questionnaire?
I would. To use it as a guide, I would not trust it entirely. No. So I would say, okay, 80% of that will guide me. I've actually used it as a guide, especially in the States, buying property there, with the Zillow or Zestimate, as it's called. And certainly, I would trust an algorithm to at least give me the value drivers of what drove the price to go up and what drove the price to be negative, and that will then allow me to give my own judgment of what I think the value may be.
And the last one, could increases in the type and amount of data negatively affect the efficiency of property due diligence?
I didn't quite catch the question, sorry, say again.
Could increases in the type and amount of data negatively affect the efficiency of property due diligence?
Can it affect it if there's more data? In my opinion, no. I think if you have the right tools, like what RECOGNYTE provides, and I think you are able to, when I say remediate, what that really means is you have multiple sources of data. So if you have more data, and you have more data points, you probably still need to have a human resolution or to make sense of those conflicts. But having that more data makes a lot more sense. So if you are looking at 10,000 property portfolio, and a lot of that property is actually land, which is not unusual in Southeastern Europe. But that land is actually no longer land. It's got an apartment building with retail stores on it. Image recognition as another data source can validate that and make sure that you're actually not, moving forward with a property or an asset, a real estate asset that actually is not land, but actually is something else today. And I think those extra data, so long you have the right tools and along, with some machine learning and some technology, I think will help you with your due diligence, not make it more negative.